Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking, and this is Sailing to Osiris from Daily Magic Games. This is designed by David Mackenzie, a designer that has never failed to delight me with his creations, and this is no different. Sailing to Osiris is as you probably guess, an Egyptian-themed game in which each player is going to be collecting resources by using kind of a communal worker pool, if you will. So it's worker placement, but it isn't like you have your own workers, something that I'll talk about more probably in my final thoughts. But you're going to be using those workers at different significant locations to collect different resources that allow you to build monuments that are to glorify the pharaoh, which has recently passed away, and his funeral barge is traveling down the river to take him to his final resting spot, most likely some giant pyramid. The winner of the game becomes the next pharaoh, because the pharaoh doesn't have any descendants. So it is a very fun game. It is, as I said, is a worker placement game, something that I really enjoy, but it also spins that mechanism on its ear a bit and has some fun with some different strategies that are going to be going on. But let me show you how the game is played, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is Sailing to Osiris, and I'm going to explain what you're looking at here before we move forward and I actually show you how a game turn will work. Now, this is a fantastic looking board. I don't know exactly if this is going to be what the production copy is going to look like, and as always with any of these prototypes that I'm sent, I just always say, you know, what you see in front of you is probably pretty close to what you're going to get, but changes could possibly be made. Alright, so as you know, or as you probably know, the Osiris is this river that travels through. And the pharaoh has died, and this is his funeral barge. And he is going, his body, I guess technically, is going to be traveling down this path. And he has no descendants, and so each person is playing a governor that is trying to impress the locals, getting glory, if you will, so they can be proclaimed the next pharaoh, and that's how you win the game. Basically a victory point race, if you will. So each phase of the game, it'll move down. So it'll go here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then you'll have the end of the game. Now along here you can see there's all of these different paths of different places where you can be putting your workers. And you can probably also see that a lot of them are fairly distinguished, if you will. Like, here you can see this is like the clay pits or whatever, and that's where you're going to be getting your clay resources. The mountains are stone, and the farmland is for the grain. Fairly straightforward as far as the resources go. But where this particular barge is going to have a lot to do with what you have available to you as far as different locations, but not necessarily. So just keep that in mind, if you will. Alright, so the game is, for up to 5 players, and I have set up a 5-player game. With lower numbers, you're going to have certain spots of the board that are going to be, non-available or what have you, but I've just got the full board available for you for this. Alright, so at the beginning of each turn, whoever the first player is considered to be the regent, and you have this bag. And in this bag, you have workers. And let me just reach in here and grab a couple of these workers so you can kind of see them. And the workers themselves are going to be colored in a certain way that denotes what they're able to work on. So, and they are color-coded, as you can see. So those would be stone workers, those would be farmers, and those would be clay workers. Now this guy, you can see with the little white markings on it, that is a master worker, if you will. And that is a very distinct ability. So getting a master worker is really good because of the fact that as you're placing these workers, normally a normal worker can only be placed on a location that that matches up as far as the color, but also matches up as to where the funeral barge is. However, if you are lucky enough to have a master worker, you can go ahead and use a further ahead spot to use. And so obviously there's a lot more versatility with those. Now, you might have said, well, hey, it looks like you put that one right in the middle there, Undead Viking. There's those 2 spots there. That's also something that is pretty neat about this. All of these locations are split up into these two spots, right? You can see this little line here. You can see there's a line there for the mountains and so forth. Now, the reason for that is that if there is no, because along the way you gain glory in this game is you're going to be building these different monuments. You have you have 3 different types of monuments that you're going to be building. And you can see, there they are. And they match up here with these 3 different types of monuments. You can see obelisks and, sphinxes and what have you. And you're going to be building these in locations on the board. You're going to be, and depending upon what, the spot can use. Like, sphinxes can be pretty much put anywhere, except they can't be put in cities. These obelisks can be put... they have more options, but they can also be placed in these spots that have 3 over here, and they can also be, and then these big arches can be actually placed in the cities, and also these spots that have the 3 resources in them. So as you place these down, however, you're placing them in 1/2 of the location. So that you put the Sphinx here, you've kind of used up that spot, and now a worker can only go in the other spot over there. If you're lucky enough to use the spot when there is no monument there, you actually get all of the resources that are available for there. So you'd get 5 resources. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if somebody built a Sphinx here, you would only have the option of building it right there, and then you'd only get 3. So that's a very important aspect of the game that you need to remember. So it's kind of neat how, like, you'll be building these locations, because that's how you get your points and how you win the game. But it is also, you're using up the spots that the resources are available. Now, I should mention that as this travels along the path, you can use the spots backwards compatible, if you will. So, like, so as you get to here, you can put your workers all the way back here. So more spots will open up as the game progresses, and you can use your workers to go backwards. But these are always able to go to a further spot. Once the bard reaches the last location over here, it kind of uses up the specific ability that these have, but then when you use these in a location, they're going to get a bonus resource for doing that, because they no longer have the versatility of being able to go up the river, but now you're going to get more resources for having those master builders. All right, so in a 5-player game like I have, each person, the regent will draw 2 of these particular workers out, and they'll put them and they'll hide them. Each person will get a little player screen, much like this, that you're going to be putting all of your information behind, so people can't see that and they can't see what you have. But you're going to take your workers, you're going to put them behind, you hand the bag to somebody else, they take 2, and so forth. Each person's going to take 2, so now there's 10 workers out of this bag. Now, then what happens is all but 2 of the workers get placed over here in this little, like, worker pool, if you will. So, like, if these are the ones left, you place those workers in that location, and they're available to be hired for resources as the game progresses. Then there's going to be, as I said, there's going to be workers left in the bag. The regent is allowed to look in the bag and see what workers are in there, and so they have a little bit of knowledge as far as what is available, or what other people may have gotten. They can discern, like as far as who, maybe if they don't see the master laborers over here, they're going to have a good idea of maybe somebody's going to have a master laborer. So it's a little bit of an advantage, a little bit of what you have as far as that goes. It's not game breaking or anything like that, but you can figure out some strategies, because this is a worker placement game, obviously. And as you place the workers down, you're using up spaces. So if somebody has a certain type of worker, you might have an edge as far as what their options may be on their turn. So after everybody's got their workers, I'll put this guy back there. Now you're going to start with your actions. Now each person gets to just take an action around the table. Each person takes an action, takes an action, takes an action, until people start saying, I don't have any more actions available, I don't have anything else I can do. Now they can stop taking actions early if they want, and I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But for the most part, usually what happens, unless you're looking to move up as far as being the first player or whatever, because the person who stops taking and basically withdraws and passes for the rest of the turn gets to be the first player the next turn, the regent. You have a situation there where most people are going to use up all of their available actions, and at that point they'll be done. So pretty simply, when it is your turn to take your actions, you have several available. And I actually like this because of the fact that, it wasn't, this is, yes, once again, this is a worker placement game, but it has lots of different actions that you can do, and they all kind of work together. And it's what I call a puzzle turn. You're trying to figure out exactly what order of the actions do I want to take in order to pull this off. So, pretty easily, it's just putting a laborer to work. There's 3 different places laborers can work. They can work on the fields, like as I talked about earlier. Like if you have, you can put a clay to work on a clay. You can put a stone to work on a stone. I should put that over there. And you can put a farmer to work on a farm. If you go to a location like that, you just gather up the resources. If they happen to have a monument on one of those locations, like so, you're going to have to use the other side of the location because they've used up half of it. But you just place your worker in a location and you gather the resources. Now you can see that these do not have player colors on them because they're kind of like a universal worker. And I want to mention, I love worker placement games where the workers themselves are distinct. It isn't just worker X that can equally do all certain kinds of jobs. So I like it when you have workers that can do other jobs, that they're specifically suited for. But so you place them like so. That's pretty simple. Now you can go to a city. There's like these locations that have cities on the board. If you go to a city, what you get to do then is you get to draw 2 of these cards. These are city cards. And the city cards have these, they have these workers or these special workers on it, like the peddler or the stonecutter. And they give you a certain power. So, stonecutter, take 1 stone from the supply for each quarry with a laborer in it. Peddler, give an opponent 1 resource, then take 3 of that same resource from the supply. Fun little things like that, where you actually enrich somebody else, but you get something back. Now, if you don't want to use the special ability of the card, you can always use the card just to gain the resources that are in the top left. You can just turn it in for that. Now, getting the card is from the city. That's actually, you get to hold on to these until you want to use them later. Now here's a couple cool things about this. So when you get these cards, you get to tab the other card. You pick one, and then you take 1 card and you then have to give it to somebody else at the table. Now this feeds into something that I really like about this game. And I think the designer of this game, they like this because a lot of the games that they've designed have this. The game has open haggling resources. Everything goes. People can hey, give me 2 clay and I'll give you a stone. Or, I have 3 stone, I really need 4 grain. Can somebody do that for me? Everything is like a haggling situation. So if you have these cards, you can say, this card's really good. I want to be able to give it to somebody who wants it, and the other players can offer you bribes, if you will, to try to get it out of you. Now, the only difference in that is that if somebody has built a monument on that location, and then you go ahead and send your worker to that location to get these cards, you have to give the other card to that person because they have the monument on that spot. So, I mean, that does limit you a little bit, but, it does have, if you go to the same spot as you have a monument, so like if I'm the blue player and I have a monument there and a place that I don't get to keep 2 cards, I was hoping, but you don't, but you do still get to auction it off or give it away as normal. So, that's how that works. Now, the last thing you can do with putting your laborer to work is you can send them to one of these caravan locations. And you can see that in these caravan locations, they have these 2 sets of resources on these locations. If you're the first person to go there and you take the spot, you get to put your camel... you get to put your camel on that spot as well, showing that you are the caravan leader. You put your worker down, you get to collect the resources that are there, and you get to use those for the other purposes that you're going to use with resources. I'm going to explain all the other things that you're going to be doing with resources here in just a little bit. Now, if somebody else wants to put a worker down there, and they go there and they take the other spot, they get the resources that are in that spot, but they have to give one of those resources to the caravan leader. So that's why being the caravan leader is a good thing, because you're going to get an extra resource if somebody else takes that location. If you yourself take the other location, you don't get, I guess technically you can give yourself one of the resources, but you're getting all of them anyway. So there's no real point about that. All right, so Those are the 3 different places that you can put your laborers to work. Now, you can build a monument. Now, if you have the resources available, if you collected the resources that you have and you need to, you can build a monument. There are these different cartouches down here that allow you to build a monument. When you choose to build a monument, you take the monument in question and you place it on the spot. You aren't building it immediately on the location. You place it, you turn in the resources that you need to. And, if you want to build an obelisk, you put an obelisk there. If you want to build a sphinx, you put a sphinx there. You put that on there. You've reserved that location. Nobody else can use that location. They can use the other ones, but nobody else can use that location until you have moved the monument onto a spot on the board. Now, when you do this, when you build it, you immediately have to spend all the resources. You can't reserve it and then slowly build up the resources. You have to have the resources available. You turn those in for that particular spot, and then you can take an action of building the monument on the actual on the different locations. That's an entirely different action, and I'll explain that here in just a little bit. But I want to talk about a couple other things that you can do. You go over here to hire these workers. It just takes, that is an action. You don't use a worker to go there. You just say, I'm going to turn in 2 resources of any type. You can mix and match, and you get a worker that's in that location. You can go to this market and you can trade. That's an action. You get to choose one of these different trades. You can trade a stone for 2 wheat, or vice versa, and so forth. Down there, you can trade 4 wheat for 2 stone, or vice versa. So you can use one of those available things and trade at the market. You can plan the monument, which I've done, but then you actually build the monument. Now, when you build the monument, you get to move and you get to place it on a location on the board that will house your monument. Now, you can build it anywhere, but you do get bonus glory if you build it at the same time that the barge is near that spot. You're also going to get bonus glory if you can manage to put your monuments next to each other on the board. You kind of have a string of your glory, if you will, along the River Osiris. So placement of of your monuments when you put them on the board can matter a great deal. You can play your cards, as an action. You play your card that you gained from the city card, and you also can do what's called one of your boon cards. Now, boon cards, everybody's going to have these 5 cards to begin the game. They're exactly the same. They're going to have the player color on them. So, Boon of Anubis, move one of your monuments on the map to a new legal location and take another turn. Take 1 laborer of your choice from the draw bag, because remember, there's still some left in the draw bag. Move 1 laborer from the map to the labor pool, and then take another turn. Build a monument on half of a terrain space only occupied by a laborer. And you may withdraw without building 1 planned monument. So, because normally you can't leave your monuments sitting there between turns. Once you put them on there, you need to put them down. But that boon allows you to wait a turn. So, sorry, I should have mentioned that. But, so when you play a boon card, you're using it, you don't get it back, it gets thrown back into the box after that particular turn. But the cool thing about using the boon card is that it prevents anybody else from using that particular boon during that particular phase of the game. So, if you are the person to use the Boon of Horus, nobody else can use the Boon of Horus for the rest of the game. Now, you can't use it again yourself for the rest of the game, but I shouldn't say they can't use it that phase of the game. They can use it on the next phase, if you will. I misspoke there. But, so you can use the Boon of Horus, and to prevent other people from using that particular ability. Which, is also, kind of neat, because, trying to remember who's used which cards and what have you. Kind of a nice little part, and, also, goes towards that long-term planning of the game, and keeping that in mind as well. So, ultimately, what's going to happen is that somebody's going to get done, and somebody's going to want to what's called withdraw, and you can, like I said, withdraw early if you decide to do so. That's that's completely up to you. But when that happens, you're going to get a bonus if you're the first person to be done. And I apologize. My board is different, so I'm going to actually put my phone down there. So you have these different locations. I'm actually just going to show you that quickly. So you have these different options, if you will. And when you withdraw, you can get this bonus. If you're the first person done, you can pick one of these bonuses. Resources, you can get a card there. You can get a point and a clay or what have you. And then you go ahead and withdraw early. And then you get to go ahead and place a marker on whichever one that you pick. And that one is not available for the rest of the game because you used it for that particular spot. And you wouldn't be able, and then for the rest of the game, that particular bonus for being the first one to be done is like not available. But you do get to be like the first player, the regent for the first game, and that means you get to be the one that handles the bag first and draws your workers out first, and what have you. And, you know, turn order can be very, very important, especially when you're trying to line up your monuments to make sure, you know, that they all manage to be, you know, like next to each other, because that can be very, very important as far as, you know, getting your bonus points at the end of the game. So at the end of the game, after the barge, you know, like it gets to this spot, that's your final turn, and then the Pharaoh's body sails towards glory. You're going to total up the total number of points that each person has, you know, because you get your points by building the different monuments. You get bonus points for building it. You get a bonus point for building it at the same spot that the barge is at that particular time. And then you start trading in for your bonus glory. You score 2 bonus glory for each of the 3 monuments you built that are adjacent to each other. You score 3 bonus glory for each set of 4 monuments you built on the same river segment. And then, if you're like the first person to build all 4 of your sphinxes, you get a bonus point. If you're the first person to build all 4 of your obelisks, you get 2 points. And if you're the first person to build all of your pylons, you get 2 bonus points. And I actually like the fact that the points scoring in this game is rather low, because it does like kind of clue into the process of like making each decision you make that much more important, you know. And I mean, we can argue point salad versus whatever if you want, but I see benefits on both sides of the coin. But I really did like the fact that this game did keep the scoring low, because it just made the fact that, like, you know, yes, you have all these different options and actions that you can take during your turn, but it makes going first really important. It makes deciding which monument you're going to build and where you're going to build it very important. It limits the resources, it limits the actions, and it limits the time that you have, and it makes all those decisions very, very monumental, if you will. Not to, you know, no pun intended as far as the monuments, but anyway. So there you go. That is Sailing to Osiris. You should have a decent idea of how the game is played. It is a worker placement game. It is a resource collection game, but I think it very, very satisfactorily spins it on its ear and offers up some really cool, interesting, different timing mechanisms as well. But I'll talk about that and a lot more in my final thoughts. You know, I just realized something. I referenced the river there to be the Osiris River. Man, I am an idiot. That is the Nile River, of course, that is found in Egypt, and you are actually traveling the Nile to get to Osiris, or the final resting place for your pharaoh, if you will. Man, my Mr. Christensen, my old geography teacher in middle school, would be shaking his head at me if he saw me now. But anyway, regardless, sorry, Mr. Christensen. So Sailing Toward Osiris, as I said, is a worker placement game, as you've seen already. That it is this worker placement, but I'm going to go back, and I mentioned that in my introduction, the communal bag of workers. I really, really enjoy the shaking the bag, the reaching in, and being able to pull out something that's a secret that you keep from everybody else. I like that whole process. Anytime I have like an unexpected variable as far as my turn goes in any game that I play, I like that. I reference this to be a puzzle game full of puzzle turns. You know, you draw those 2 workers out, and then you have those workers, and you realize you might be sitting there saying, I need to get a bunch of stone. I got to figure out how to get stone. If I got a master stone worker right now, that would be the absolute perfect thing. It would help me so perfectly if I could get that. And if you can manage to snag that out of the bag, you know, wow, that's perfect. But you're probably not going to. I mean, just the odds are not in your favor. So now you get another type of worker, and you have it. So now what are you going to do? Are you going to use resources to turn them in to get that type of worker, so then you'd have that worker available to work those stone mountains for you? Are you going to go a different route entirely, and are you going to like use like workers in caravans to grab those things? Are you going to get cards? Are you going to get those things? So that you have that puzzle, that layered puzzle that you're going to use to figure out exactly what you're going to accomplish on that particular turn. And I like that. I mean, there's something to be said about a game that is straightforward and, doesn't have a lot of bumps in the road. It's something that you can kind of relax and enjoy and just not really, be into the game, if you will. But when a game wants to tax my brain, tax my ability to like work the process through, and as well as the fact that this game actually has some really, really good interaction with the other players, and I'll talk about that in just a couple seconds too. And so you have these different avenues of possibilities that you can use to gather the necessary items that you need to work towards that victory of having the most points at the end of the game. Now, I mentioned the interactivity. So lots of worker placement games, you have the spot, you use it up, and nobody else can use it. And of course there's rules that might break that or what have you. But that's a pretty commonplace thing when it comes to worker placement games. It's like you have a place, the worker goes there, it uses up the place. So but a lot of times you have those games and it just seems like the bumping of heads just doesn't really happen very much. Yeah, somebody might, step on your toes a little bit and get in your way. But for the most part, everybody kind of just, there's enough real estate, if you will, that most people aren't going to have that problem. But here you not only have workers that are going to be using up spaces, but you also have people building monuments in spaces that are going to use up those spots as well. And the strategic location of those monuments and using up the resources available is a very important aspect of the game and something that I really, really enjoyed. Because not only when you use up a monument in a spot, not only does it, take up like the spot for somebody else, but it takes up for you as well. Now all of a sudden those resources aren't available. So I like that. I really enjoyed the dual aspect of the usage of the spaces like that. And plus because the monuments are they're there, right? I mean they're taking up that spot and they're not going anywhere. I mean obviously there's the one card, the one boon card that you can use to move it. But I like that aspect a great deal. Now I mentioned a couple other things, and I just want to make sure I touch on this, is the fact that the timing of everything is very important. And the being the first to withdraw and being able to be like the first player the next turn is a very viable strategy. It's a very viable thing to pull off because of the fact that you especially if there's like a really important spot that would maybe connect all of your monuments together, things like that. I like the fact that you might give up some actions, to put yourself in a better place, better spot for the next turn. And so, that layers into all the different interactions, all the different things that are going on. And then the final thing as far as the players go is, I love the haggling. I love the discussion. I love the conversation. Hey, come on, help me out here. Give me, I desperately need a stone. Then you have the person, well, you desperately need it. You probably shouldn't have used that word. What's it actually worth to you? And then, of course, you get another person in the conversation. They're like, "Well, I do it for 2 clay." Whoa! Let's. We're still talking here. I'll give you a clay and two grain. It's like, oh wait. And somebody goes, "I got 4 grain. I got nothing to do with it. I'll give you that." So you have that fun little aspect of everybody at the table being a part of those decisions and being a part of the discussion. And that keeps everybody entertained. It keeps everybody focused on the table, keeps everybody involved in what's going on. And so, it is a fun game. It has a low scoring game. So like as I said, all the points are very important. So when you can get 1 or 2 points, it's not a throwaway. Who cares? It's 1 or 2 points. 1 or 2 points is likely going to matter when it comes to the end of the game and who is the winner and who is the loser. It is an incredibly fun game. It is like one of those, like, it's a worker placement game, but it isn't just a worker placement game, if you understand what I'm saying. So I strongly suggest, if you dig the theme, if you like, this like kind of middleweight strategy Euro, if you will, I strongly suggest you check this one out. I doubt you're going to be disappointed in it. So there you go. That is Sailing Toward Osiris. I think I called it Sailing to Osiris a couple times. So I apologize for that. So that is Sailing Toward Osiris. If you have any questions about it, by all means, ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. And until next time, I'm the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day.